Good afternoon. Welcome to another segment of the Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show. Today is Friday, July 11th, 2014. Well, after weeks and weeks of speculation, we finally have a break in the NBA free agency as the first real domino fell, and that is the decision by LeBron James to go back home to Cleveland. Now, I reported in my last podcast or last segment or last recording that I felt that LeBron played his last game in Miami. And I felt that way for myriad of reasons. And I got to say, the NBA really needs to give thanks, and Cleveland in particular. The fans, the media, the ownership, management, the team, they better give thanks to the San Antonio Spurs. Because if the Spurs didn't do what they did, which was to not only beat the Heat, but humiliate them, I think LeBron would have stayed in Miami at least a little bit longer. But when the Spurs did what they did to the Heat about a month ago, I think that was the impetus or the final nail in the coffin, let me call it that way. The final nail in the coffin for LeBron to say, let me take my talents back to Cleveland. And I'm going to say this. He made the right decision, and I'm going to explain to you why. Look at those two rosters, folks. Look at Miami's roster. Look at Cleveland's roster. I disagree with anybody who could sit there and tell me Miami has the better roster. Miami's roster is not better in the present, nor is it better in the future. Wade is finished. Wade can talk about changing his diet, this, that, and the other. Ask CC Sabathia about that. He's the pitcher for the New York Yankees. What happens when you try to when you carry weight for so long and then you try to lose that weight? Ask him how that worked out for him. It's not as easy of a transition, folks. And not only that, it can end up causing more problems than solving. Okay? Because after a while, your body gets accustomed and adjusts to carrying a certain weight. So therefore, when you try to lose weight or you gain too much weight or you lose too much weight, it could affect your body in a very negative way. Now, I'm not no body expert. That's just an opinion. But the point that I'm making is if I look at Cleveland's team, their team is much better not only now, but in the future. Not only that, they got 3 number 1 picks for next year, one of which happens to be Miami's. So if anybody was saying, well, Miami should tank, which I was thinking about until I found out that, well, Cleveland owns their number 1 pick, that's not really a very good option for Miami. But we'll get to Miami later. But I've got to give a big shout out to Chris Sheridan. He's the only reporter who had the guts to stand by his reporting. He said 3 days ago, 75% certain LeBron was coming back to Cleveland. Then 2 days ago, 90% certain. Last night, he was 100% certain. And do you realize each 3 nights he took a beating from the media? Oh, how could you put those kind of percentages? And you don't know what you're talking about. Who are your sources? I mean, I'm sitting here like, wow. This is the only man who has the guts to stand out on his reporting because he was saying, look, he stands by his sources and what he's reporting. And this is not, like he said, this is not my first rodeo, okay? He's been doing that for over 25 years. Then you get I call a weak-kneed coward like Chris Broussard. And I'm going to explain to you why I just called him names. Because I had respect for him up until late last night, early this morning when he tweeted that the reason for the holdup is that LeBron is uncomfortable with Dan Gilbert's letter, that's still bothering him. Folks, let me explain something to you. And I'm glad Chris Sheridan called out Chris Broussard over this. That is lazy and poor journalism. First of all, you wasn't reporting a fact. You was reporting an opinion as if it was fact. And he never would take a definitive, this is what's going to go down. Well, I'm 85% certain, but he was always hedging. Like, but, he could change his mind and this and that, and you never know about Pat Riley. No, if you believe in what your sources is telling you, stick with it. Stick with it. Go with what your sources is telling you. Then you'll find out if your sources know what the hell they're talking about or if they're full of you know what. But the reality is, for you to go out there and post out that, well, he was still concerned about that letter that Dan Gilbert wrote back in 2010, that hateful letter, and that was what was holding up. Even I called it a lie. Because if you use common sense, let me ask you folks a question. Let's say someone wrote a very spiteful letter about you. Would you even entertain going back with that individual or that company? And if you do, would you allow the process to go all the way to the 11th hour before you say, you know what, that letter is really bothering me? No. If that letter was bothering you, that's something you hash out from the beginning if you're even contemplating potentially going back. You don't wait until the 11th hour to say, well, that letter is still bothering me. And if Chris was using his brains, he would have known that. Okay? So I believe that those were Miami people putting that stuff out. That was not coming from LeBron or his camp. Because how do I know that wasn't coming from LeBron and his camp? If you read the letter that LeBron wrote, or the essay that LeBron wrote with Lee Jenkins from SportsIllustrated.com, that was not a letter you could craft in a couple of hours. That letter took weeks because he hit. And I'm not going to sit here and read the letter. You can read it yourself. It's on the internet, okay? That letter took weeks. He hit every key note. I mean, that letter was as perfect as you could get. Now, was he being 100% truthful in it? No. But the thing is this. He learned his lesson from 2010. Never burn your bridges. Which is what he did in 2010. Okay? The way he handled the decision. This time, he handled it like a mature adult. And if you read that letter, there is no way that was crafted after those so-called sources said he was bothered by that letter that Dan Gilbert wrote. So that told me that was lazy reporting. So I got to give Dan Sheridan props because not only did he stand by his story when a lot of people in the media was crucifying him. And the reason they was crucifying him because he doesn't work no longer for ESPN, okay? And ESPN like to think they have the monopoly on everything, okay? And the reality is you didn't. You didn't have the monopoly on it. Because you got people who were afraid to stand on what they really knew because they were afraid of appearing wrong or making a mistake, or they was afraid that their bosses would chew them out if they're wrong. Because now Chris Broussard is saying, well, my sources did tell me that Cleveland was a strong one. You wasn't acting that way. You was acting like you was waffling. And then even the great Brian Windhorst, who's supposed to know LeBron better than his mother, kept hedging. Well, I'm not certain, which means he says, I believe. He kept saying, I believe. I believe, folks, is not the same thing as I know. That means I'm guessing when I say I believe. It's a guess. It's an opinion. But it doesn't say I know. Chris Sheridan was the only one who kept saying, I know. See the difference? Subtle words, but very important, very different. Okay, very, very important. But forget about these writers or reporters and stuff. But let's get back to LeBron James and the Miami Heat. Pat Riley's arrogance is part of the reason LeBron is no longer in Miami. I mean, first of all, forget the reports that, well, he was having issues with Riley, which there is now being substantiated, but you failed to put the right roster around LeBron. You saw it when the year before That was when, and this is why I'm blaming Pat Riley. Because when Ray Allen hit that jumper, first of all, if the Spurs had knocked down their free throws, the Ray Allen jumper would not have mattered. But nonetheless, Ray Allen hits that jumper in Game 6, which allowed the Heat to survive one more game, and then they won Game 7. And they won that close. But that should have told you, you was outplayed in that series. The better team did not win that series, folks. I better make changes. I better break up the big three. You failed to do that, and that was your undoing. Because you tried to come back with the same cast of characters, just different a couple of role players, but you came back with the same cast of characters. And this time the Spurs were not only waiting for you, they were ready for you. They wanted to beat you. They wanted to humiliate you. How do I know this? Because once LeBron announced that he was going back to Cleveland, there was, according to the reports, there was widespread praise around the league from executives around the league saying LeBron did the right thing. So that means they hated LeBron in Miami. I think mainly because they hated Riley, but that's neither here nor there. But Riley should have updated that roster. He should have known this roster can't not continue the way it is. And he even admitted he was contemplating breaking them up. Well, there's an old saying, folks. Go with your instincts because it's usually correct. Your first instinct is usually the correct response. Go with it. He failed to do that. That's a large part of the reason why LeBron is in Cleveland and not still playing in Miami. Okay? That's a large part of the reason why. I mean, we can talk about, well, LeBron didn't like this and didn't like that, but let me explain something to you. If they had won or lost real close but was very competitive, or they won, he would have most likely came back at least another year or two. But the fact that they lost the way they did, it made it easy for him to say, bye-bye, so long, see you. The clues were clearly there, folks. The clues were clearly there. If you listen to LeBron, right after the finals, this is going to be different than 2010. I'm not going to, I'll do it the way I did it in 2010. What did that tell you? Oh, I'm entering free agency, but I'm not going to make the same mistake as having the decision. And then he secretly met with Dan Gilbert to hash out that whole issue about the letter. See, now, you could make an argument that, Dan Gilbert tampered. Well, guess what? Tampering goes on a lot in the NBA, in sports. But particularly in the NBA, tampering goes on a lot. It's just all not getting caught. That's all it is. But tampering goes on a lot, folks. Okay? That's just the way it works. As Bobby the Brain Heenan once said, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. Okay? That's just the way it works. Okay? I like something, I don't know if it was I think it was Bobby the Brain Heenan or Jesse the Body Ventura says. No, it's Bobby the Brain Heenan. Win if you can, lose if you must, but always cheat. Okay? That's just the way it works. That's just the way the world works, folks. Get over it. This is why successful people can be successful, because they're always looking for an edge. Whatever the rule is, they're going to not only go up to the very line from being legal to illegal, they're going to try to cross it and hope they don't get caught. That's just the way it works. Okay? That's why those who play by the rules all the time usually end up on the short end of the stick. That's just the way it is, folks. Now, Miami re-signed Chris Bosh, and before we want to criticize Chris Bosh for not taking that Houston offer, I'm going to say this. Miami did the smart thing in really giving him max money. Even though he doesn't deserve max money, they had to give him max money, because if they did not give him that max money, he would have went to Houston. But it's hard to ask a player, especially a Bosh's caliber, because Bosh is not LeBron James. Bosh cannot walk away from $30 million. I'm sorry. Because why? He doesn't have the same opportunities that a LeBron James have. This is what we call reality, folks. So Pat Riley knew, if I'm going to keep Bosh here, I got to pay him max money. They didn't want to give him max money. Matter of fact, Stephen A. Basically mentioned what I was saying. They were conspiring to get him out of Houston. Out of Miami. But the reality is, once James made it clear he was going home, now Pat Riley had to do what was best for the Miami Heat. Now, by keeping Bosh, what that should do, even with a minimized Wade, and Wade will be minimized, folks, that should keep them somewhat competitive, which means you're not going to be at the bottom of the basement. Okay? You're not going to be at the bottom of the basement. It'll keep you somewhat competitive. In the Eastern Conference, you go from being a definite 1 or 2 seed to now maybe a 6 to an 8 seed. That's what the loss of LeBron does in this case. The fact that you kept Bosh. Okay? Especially now that you got a little cap space because of LeBron's departure, you could build a decent team. Not a championship caliber team, but a decent team that can at least be competitive in the East. Okay? So, in the end, it might have been the best thing for all sides. I said from the beginning, if I was Pat Riley, you should have saw the writing on the wall when the first time he met with you since the season was over was yesterday. Not yesterday, Wednesday. That was the first time he met with you since the season was over. Free agency started the week before, folks. So why did LeBron take that long to meet with you? It was because he was planning on leaving. That was the clue. And matter of fact, Pat Riley knew it because now, when Pat Riley gave that press conference that he gave, now I can understand why he was so angry. Now I can understand why he gave that State of the Union address the way he gave it. Because the reports is out and is being confirmed by multiple sources. So it's not just one person saying this. But it's being confirmed by multiple sources that Pat Riley wanted a one-on-one meeting, and it was sometime earlier that same day, with LeBron James. And LeBron rebuffed him and said, if you want to speak to me, it will be through my agent, Rich Paul. Pat Riley felt that was an insult because, hey, I'm Pat Riley. Why can't I speak to you? Why must I speak to your agent? So Pat Riley was pissed off. And and the media wants to, again, kiss Pat Riley's rings. Okay? Pat Riley really did a Dan Gilbert, folks. Quiet as it's kept. Pat Riley did a Dan Gilbert. If you listen to that press conference again, he did a Dan Gilbert, folks. He just didn't use the same language. But he did a Dan Gilbert. If you have the guts, you see things through. You don't just leave at the first sign of trouble. This is hard. We've been a championship team before. We've been championship. Listen to what he said, folks. And he did a Dan Gilbert. But people want to now praise him. Oh, look at the way the Heat handled his departure compared to Cleveland in 2010. People are such hypocrites. Nobody wants to really criticize Pat Riley. Pat Riley was being hypocritical in that meeting. During that press conference. Oh, you don't leave at the first sign of trouble. Tell New York that back in 1995, folks. When he didn't get what he wanted, so what did he do? He faxed in his resignation. That's a punkish maneuver. If you wanted to leave, which was your right, you go there, you face the man face to face and let him know I'm out of here. You did, to me, worse than what LeBron James did in 2010. You faxed in your resignation. But yet LeBron is supposed to stay loyal and stick things through. And then jumping from team to team looks bad and it destroys your legacy. First of all, he's talking to LeBron James. He's not talking about Chris Bosh or Dwayne Wade or any of them. He's talking specifically to LeBron James. Okay? Wait a minute. It came out later on. James said, well, wait a minute. You didn't say that back in 2010 when you was recruiting me down to Miami. That jumping from team to team is bad. Then he was saying, he mention to me, he did one of the most unpardonable sins. he mentioned about Savannah Brimson, which is LeBron James's wife, is pregnant with a baby girl coming on the way. Well, the problem with that is LeBron didn't notify anybody, or Savannah didn't notify anybody of that. And according to the reports, they were livid that he did that. So there were a lot of things that played into it. A lot of things. But now I understand why Pat Riley did that. He was venting. Not because they lost in the finals. He was venting because he saw his superstar slipping away from him. And he didn't get what he wanted. So he did a Dan Gilbert, folks. Let the media sit there and continue blowing smoke up that man's rear end. But at the end of the day, he did a Dan Gilbert. That's the truth. But nobody wants to call Pat Riley on it. But that's the truth. He did a Dan Gilbert. He just did it a different way, but it was nonetheless the same effect. I want to thank you for watching another segment of the Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show. Have a nice weekend.